This episode of the Disney Dish Podcast is sponsored by TouringPlans.com, where you can find trip planning tools and advice for Walt Disney World, Disneyland, and Universal Studios Orlando. Disney Dish listeners can subscribe with discount code DISH2013. That's DISH2013 to get 25% off a one-year subscription to TouringPlans.com. Check it out as soon as you're done listening. Thanks! Welcome back to another edition of the Unofficial Guide Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It is I, Len Testa, and I'd like to welcome Jim back to the show. Today we're going to be talking about limited time magic and also some next-gen stuff. And as usual, it's going to be a rambling discourse on pretty much everything we can think of. But before we get started, let me welcome back Jim. Jim, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, welcome. Good. How's your spring been? Good?
Spring. What is the spring you speak of?
Yeah. There's
right.
It implies that there's
Shoot!
an outdoors.
Get off the deck! It's a mastodon. I'm so sorry. You put the feeder out and they come.
Fair enough. Well, today we're talking about limited time magic. Why don't we get started with that with a quick intro? The fact that they're converting the APs to RFID and not directly to wristbands tells me that they're waiting on the wristband thing. Because they wouldn't do it this month if they're going to release the wristbands next month. No,
and that's, I think that's where this gets difficult, because it's like with this continuing to slide and with these these stories out there ahead of this, it's only a matter of time before the what's going on stories start happening. I mean,
did you see the thing with the laws that they have to get the Florida legislature?
Yeah, I mean,
did you see how Ticketmaster is getting Disney's way?
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of these things
classic.
And this, you only thought of this now?
I know. Like, guys, you put the patent down in like 2010.
Yeah, and it's like,
3 years later, you're like, we should really check to see whether the law covers this.
I don't know. I just feel bad because, again, basically what they're going to do is, this is Disney. They never fail. They're just going to redefine the terms of success.
Yeah.
So, at some point it's like, hey, you can use a wristband to get a soda. Yeah, we won.
Woo, like, wristbands are out. Woo.
That's right. That's it.
Oh, the thing that I think is hysterical is Disney wants the new law, to be so broad that right now you buy a ticket, right? Yep. And you could be denied entrance, but Disney wants to change the legal definition to a license to enter a theme park. And Ticketmaster's like, yeah, let's make everything a license. But did you see why?
What is that?
So right now, essentially what Ticketmaster wants is they want to cut the legs out from like StubHub and all these reseller sites. Mm-hmm. So the idea is, if you, Jim, buy a ticket to One Direction and you buy it for $100, you can go onto StubHub right now and resell it for $1,500. Ticketmaster wants a cut of that $1,500. So what they're going to tell you is, Jim, you've bought the ticket, but what you've bought is a license. If you want to sell it, you have to give us a cut. And Disney's like, well, that's a great idea. And so what Ticketmaster's trying to do is trying to piggyback on Disney's changing of the term ticket to license, right? For the wristbands. Ticketmaster's trying to jump on the same bill. So essentially for cover. And so Disney's now in the position of saying, no, that's crazy, Ticketmaster. I know you're another large multinational corporation, but that's excessively greedy. Get off my bill. Which I think it's just adorable. Ticketmaster's like, yeah, we'll let Disney take the fall for this one.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Jason Garcia did an article on it for the Sentinel last week. It was pretty funny. He's like, the thing that's complicating is Ticketmaster wants Disney to provide cover for essentially changing the terms of all of their tickets as well.
This is, and again,
beautiful.
Just when you think that this can't get it to be any bigger, a boondoggle, something like that comes over the hedge.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so
I just feel for them at this point, because it's sort of like, meanwhile,
Well, you think normally Disney goes to the Florida legislature and says, I want a minor change to the verbiage in the ticket law. I mean, that's like 2 days, right? I mean, it's as long as it takes to type it up. But when Ticketmaster jumped in and said, hey, you know what we could do here? And now Disney's like, no, Ticketmaster, go away.
Yeah. They've got to pick up some speed. I mean, in fact, that's we might as well just jump into recording, because that's the other thing right now is that limited time magic. It's one of these things where it's like, this is only in place because my Disney experience wasn't ready to go in January. And meanwhile, here's the folks looking at 2014 going, what are we doing, guys? Because if this is continuing to slide, we're going to need something to promote. And frankly, Snow White's The Seven Dwarfs Mine Coaster isn't going to be enough to get people to come down. That's actually one of the reasons why Future Fest is being fast-tracked. It's just, give me something.
So let's talk about this. So limited time magic is a series of weekly events going on in both parks, right? On both coasts, in Florida and in California as well. And the idea is that Disney's going to promote some relatively small scale thing. Some are bigger than others. Sometimes it's tied to a holiday. Sometimes it's tied to a season, like Valentine's Day or spring or whatever, and sometimes it's just whatever they could come up. And I guess the first couple started out pretty well. There were some big interest, but I couldn't tell you right now what this week's limited time magic is. Could you? Do you know?
Well, that's the only one that's gotten any promotion in the last couple of weeks is the Greek thing that the Opa. Right now, they were kind of hoping, okay, the actual holidays, Easter will carry us through.
Yeah, those provide anchors, right? Like Martin Luther King Day, Valentine's Day was big, right? They did a romance thing. Easter is big, 4th of July. So you figure you got maybe a dozen of those in a given year that you can mine. And then they can do anniversaries like, Mickey Mouse's birthday is obviously going to be something. But then they're probably left with a gap of like 25 or 30 weeks in the year where they've got to be creative about the event, where it's not tied to a particular external thing. And that's where they did things like having the barbershop quartet sing boy band songs for a week, which was it made me feel like I needed a shower. I felt dirty. I felt dirty and cheapened on their behalf.
Okay.
But what's the
same time? I got to talk with the back during the new Fantasyland press launch, and got to sit down with the limited time magic guy, and it was interesting. They were trying to talk about, this is all about scale, to the effect of, we'll do things like the Friday the 13th thing in September, where the park will be open late, and you'll get these amazing, the villains take over the park thing. But at the same time, I said, some days it'll just be, there's a new cupcake at the Main Street Bakery, and, that they're only there for one day, and when they're gone, they're gone. And it's like, so... But that'll be the limited time magic, the cupcake.
And like I said, some of it you can probably anchor, pretty well, holidays and stuff. And I realize they can't do something big every week, or maybe even every 2 weeks. But the idea of a cupcake is like scraping the bottom of the barrel there. I hear one of the limited time magic events though is they're going to redo the 24-hour thing.
Well, yeah, and
it's a rumor in May, right?
The interesting thing is this is supposedly on tap for May. The noise is mostly coming out of California, though my understanding is that they believe that they have to do it in Florida if they're going to do it in California.
Yeah, you have to do it.
In fact, it's interesting you bring that up, because when I was talking with the guy about the villain event, I brought up the 24 hours thing, because it's like, face it, you've got all of these people who came to the park that day, who crammed in. And the problem is that, again, a lot of it was annual pass holders. And particularly in California.
The traffic on I-5 made the news. That was...
Yeah. Okay, well,
it's like a 2-mile backup or something.
And annual pass holders aren't like the day guests. They don't show up 5 to a car, and take up one space. There's 1 to a car.
Yeah. And
they suddenly had this horrific parking situation. They weren't staffed properly, but then that was the thing. The guy said in our defense is like, look, we had seen, middle of February, middle of the week.
Yeah, middle of the week. Yeah,
look at our historic patterns, and it's like, okay, this is what we'll need to staff. And now we know that was a mistake, and that for our product, we need to do a better job of actually staffing.
Yeah, I didn't think that. I knew that they had miscalculated, they had understaffed, but I didn't fault them for that, because it was literally the first time for a one-off event. Your predictions could be off. I totally get it. Now if it's the same thing this year,
you gotta wonder. And I hate to say this, but the Disney was counting in February on the weather. That it's cold, it's wet. It's that they were counting on that being a factor to restrict crowd size. Tell me, in May, that's going to be an issue.
Well, plus it's Memorial Day weekend, isn't it?
Oh, did they settle on that date? Oh my God.
Yeah, it's so Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day is the 27th. It's the fourth Monday in May, right? So the Friday the 24th is the beginning of Memorial Day weekend, and the next day is the Saturday. So all of the issues about people having the day off or even a 3-day weekend, I mean, that's gonna impact them. The funny thing is I don't know how many more people they can fit in the parks. I was in the Magic Kingdom, and at 3:30 in the morning, it looked like the 4th of July, but dark. It looked like, a noon on the 4th of July, but dark. I mean, people were walking around pushing baby strollers with turkey legs, in their hands, and eating and laughing, and everyone was in a good mood. It was just, it was like a normal summer day, but it was dark outside. They were in shorts. It was a blast. I had a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, and I'm happy they're doing it, but I don't know how they could fit more people in the park, especially in California. I mean, they're going to have to start parking people on the 23rd.
True,
It's going to look on Thursday, like here's your, or they're going to have to set up additional parking like at Angel Stadium or something. But it's baseball season, so I don't. They'll have to look at the schedule, and they'll have to bus people in. But I'm happy they're doing it, but it's an interesting idea.
Well, and the other thing, let's remember the first time they did this, in 2012, at least for Disneyland, Cars Land wasn't open. You, in theory, can fit there's now this huge draw for DCA. But I guess that's the other mitigating factor here. Is it strictly Disneyland that's open for 24 hours, or is it Disneyland and DCA? Because, again, that's what wound up biting them in the butt on both coasts, was because it was only one park. There was no release valve if you needed, to give people some place to go. Okay, so I remember talking with you guys.
I've heard both parks are going to be open.
Okay, cool. That's the smart play, because I remember talking with somebody who worked on the crew for Modern Family, and they had convinced themselves that this is when they shot their episode where the
I remember,
and it was just a notion of, that's the day the park's going to be open 24 hours. Perfect. That'll make your life so much easier for us while we're shooting.
Yeah, we'll have much more time to shoot.
They had to call town hall, and it's like, we need more plaids to push back the crowd so we can actually shoot. Yeah, it was a tough. I mean, don't get me wrong. It worked out well for them. From Disney's point of view, it made the parks look crowded and fun and exciting on Modern Family. But from a shooting point of view, it was a disaster. Yeah.
So besides the 24-hour event, what are the big things that two questions? One is, what are the big events that Disney has planned for the rest of the year? Are they really planning a year in advance?
Well, no, they are. If anything, what makes this difficult is that, obviously, for example, in the case of When the Villains Take Over, they want merch available. They want T-shirts. They want keychains. They want hats. And so those ones, you have to go, it was like you have to look at the schedule and stick a flag in. This is the date. This is what we're going to do. Make the designs, and now let's go to the Orient and get the T-shirts and the hats and the keychains made, so they'll be on the shelves to sell. But you can't take that approach to all this. Not everything can be a merch-heavy event. So
yeah, they're not going to do 52 merch events. In fact, they might even have trouble doing 12 just because of the not that they couldn't get all of that stuff from China, but the logistics of it for the small team that's probably managing it.
Well, and at the same time, they wound up with these situations like, for example, little things that came back and kind of bit them in the butt in weird ways. Like, for example, remember the Long Lost Characters promotion?
Where it was like Scrooge McDuck and people that you, Little John, people that you never see in the parks.
Well, this is the thing, that when the vote came down, and then it's like, they want the Three Little Pigs. Okay, well, we have modern era Three Little Pigs costumes. We used them. They were redesigned for Spectral Magic, and it's like, okay, we can do that. But somebody then got the big idea, well, you can't do the Three Little Pigs without the Big Bad Wolf. And so, let's bring out the Big Bad Wolf costume.
It's the costume from like 1958.
Yeah.
Was it really? It was
actually mid-70s, all right? And here's where it gets interesting.
People were smaller back then, Jim.
well, what are the effect that this is when Bill Justice, the Disney legend, was designing a lot of the costumes, and so it's like he looked out through the mouth. So all right, so they dig out the old Big Bad Wolf costume, and it was just sort of like, oh yeah, this is before we figured out how to ventilate these things. So the person inside of it is dying, but more to the point, they're on stage. And it's been so long since this thing has been out in public. He's performing and begins to realize that the black face covering that's in the mouth of the Big Bad Wolf, the glue is letting go.
Oh, because it hasn't been used in years, and it's gotten brittle and stale.
So now he's interacting with the public, and little kids are looking up. It looks like the Wolf Ada guy.
My God, it is the Big Bad Wolf. Look, he's eating someone.
I can see the guy inside. And so now the Big Bad Wolf has to be doing meet and greets with a hand jammed into his mouth to hold the thing in place.
So now he's got a dead arm. Only one arm works on the Big Bad Wolf. Is he the lame Big Bad Wolf? Some sort of industrial accident backstage? What?
No, it was a bad thing. They kept having to run him off stage, try to glue, try to resew. And the interesting thing is this was a popular enough promotion that the studio sent the report to the studio. It's like, you should have seen the line for Robin Hood. And it's kind of interesting that evidently Disney Channel, which has been revisiting classic Disney characters and sort of retooling them as series. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got, for example, that 7D, the Seven Dwarf show that's in the works. They were the ones who was like, oh, Robin Hood, okay, thank you. And evidently, just on the back of the public's reaction to, this limited time magic thing, that there's now a proposal making their way through the Disney, actually it's for Disney Junior, but for a Robin Hood animated series that'll use these characters again. But again, in some sort of preschool type setting. But yeah, I mean, it's weird how the lines of communication in Disney work. But at the same time, going forward, they are talking about revisiting this idea for the fall. But they, from Disney's point of view, it's like, can we actually get characters back in the park that we'd like to see come back? Like, for example, Darkwing Duck. There's a number of people. In fact, it's been kind of ironic to watch the cuts that have been made on the gaming side of Disney. Letting Warren Spector go and shutting down the Epic Mickey thing, because that group has wanted to do a Darkwing Duck game for so long. It's ridiculous. But at the same time, you have to have proof that the public out there wants this. So, as soon as they heard about the Robin Hood thing, they were like, could we rig the thing next time around to get Darkwing Duck?
Could you let us know if this is going to be an online poll? We might need to make some calls.
That's right. Just sit there and hammer the button, Barry. We need Darkwing Duck to win. So, but yeah, it's a strange situation, and more to the point, let's be blunt here. This is all kind of a bad, a patch on a bad tire, because limited time magic was only really put in place because the magic bands, the My Disney Experience thing, just wasn't ready to roll in 2013. In fact, that's one of the reasons why, frankly, the events for the latter part of the year are so vague, or were so vague, because they were kind of hoping that they would have magic bands come up out of the ground, at least in Florida, would be such an amazing sensation, and people would be so excited about it that they'd kind of forget that there was this limited time magic thing going on, and they could then revert to the cupcake model. It's like, hey,
there's new cupcakes, new drinks.
That's right. Hey, just today, and that was limited, and now we go away.
Coke Zero. I mean, without ice cubes. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It is one of these situations where, let's face it, the goalpost for that project just continues to slide. I mean, you had heard the fall now, maybe?
So I'd heard. So originally the first set of public wristband testing was supposed to be in February. Mm-hmm. That got pushed back to April, May, and then I heard other people who were sort of they were being contacted by Disney for tentative testing in September, and almost as soon as they had got that first round of calls saying, what does your September look like, to come down and test this out, they got another call that said, you know what, we'll call you when it's ready, which means that don't make any plans for September. And that was sort of the interesting thing from my perspective there, because I think you and I talked about this offline, but the idea is that if they didn't have it ready for February, then they weren't going to start doing large scale testing in March and April during spring break. They'd have maybe May to do it, late April and May to do it. But after that, it's summer, and you're not gonna roll out new technology during your busiest time of the year. It's the reason why big retailers don't make computer system changes in December, because you're not gonna do anything at all to impact your computer systems, especially your payment systems during your busiest time of the year. So Disney's not gonna make changes to their payment systems, which essentially is what Magic Bands are. They're not going to do that during summer. They'll wait till September to do it again. But the interesting thing there is they've got September, maybe part of October and part of November to do this testing. But once Thanksgiving rolls around, that's it for their testing for the rest of the year. Because like I said, they're not going to. I would be shocked if their payment systems were not completely frozen and locked down with no changes being made. After the second week of November, Iger himself would have to say, I authorize the release of this software after November 1st. Because if something goes wrong with payment software, and it starts impacting revenue, then that's where people lose their jobs. So really they've got part of April, they've got maybe some dates in May, they've got maybe August, the second half of August. They've got September, maybe the first half of October, maybe all of October, to get this thing sort of rolled out. Is that enough time to test something this big?
Not at all. And in fact, where it gets interesting is the ripple effect. The fact that this has not launched. I mean, let's disregard limited time magic for a while, but let's talk about what's going on physically in the parks. For example, I'm sure you've seen the new Tangled themed restrooms that have opened.
Yeah, they're pretty good actually. They've got charging stations in them too for your iDevices or your Android phone or whatever. Yeah.
Don't get used to that, Len. That's not supposed to. And it's kind of ironic. This is the one thing that people view as a huge success. This is something that the parks have needed forever. That's never supposed to have been there, Len.
It inadvertently got put in by a contractor.
Well,
it looks pretty formal, Jim.
Wait till you hear why they're there. Okay, why this was put in.
Wait, hold on. Can I just give my cynical opinion first?
Sure.
It's because the My Disney Experience app is so bloated and slow that it's sucking the power out of everyone's cell phones, and they're realizing that you're only going to get 4 hours of battery life if you use it. Therefore, you need to charge it. That's just my cynical thing, Jim.
That's not cynical. That's practical. All right. But here's the thing: the way My Disney Experience, the fast pass booking in advance, was supposed to work. They knew that they were going to need a fail-safe, because face it, you're going to be in the park. You're going to have a fast pass set up for Big Thunder or Splash or something like that, and it's going to go down.
Or it's going to rain or something. Yeah, something happens and you have to reschedule while you're in the park.
Okay, so you're going to need stations in the park where people can go, and because not everyone's going to have this on their iPhone or that sort of thing. That some people are going to have physical passes that they're going to have to change.
Yeah.
There's going to be two places in the park where this is supposed to happen. One is in the town hall area. In fact, for a while there, it was going to be in the garden space where they have like the meet and greet with Santa and the Easter Bunny and that sort of thing. But I think now they've decided we really are going to need to be in a situation where we're going to need to have a plaid available just in case they're so technological issues. Go figure. So this should be physically in City Hall. So
that's right.
But they knew they needed a second station deeper in the park. And so initially the plan was that this was going to go in the Crow's Nest in Adventureland. But then what they found was that Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom was so ridiculously popular that they now felt they needed a blow-off valve, something else for guests to do to take away from, to cut down on these lines of people who are 5 and 10 people deep at the individual stations for Sorcerer of the Magic Kingdom. So that's when they came up with the idea of the new Pirates adventure game.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. So to alleviate the pressure on the sorcerers.
Okay, so now here's the problem.
This is like the dominoes falling, right? Because
this is exactly
because this is a problem. We're doing this, but that impacts this other project over here.
Here we go. All right.
I get this feeling. If you're in park ops, and you propose something like this, you're walking down the hallway in the corporate offices. Someone's going to shank you. He's just going to be like, what happened to Steve? He went out for a sandwich. Yeah, it's a funny story.
Well, no, you've absolutely nailed it. Because what happened was that, okay, so now if you're doing a sorcerer's type game, you need it someplace like the Firehouse. You need a place where you check in, you get issued your map, that sort of thing. So now the Crow's Nest, because obviously it's an Adventureland, it now becomes the go-to place to pick up your map to sign in for the Pirates game, which means, okay, so where is our Magic Bands place?
Adventurelands is now off the map then, right? So, yeah.
Now, again, I know people were actually making jokes about this because, to the effect of, because it makes no sense to theme an area to look as heavily as it does with Tangled and with the tower in the background. And so is that where we're going to go meet and greet Rapunzel and Flynn Rider? And it's like, and of course, she's like, oh, no, it's a bathroom. We would never send people to do a meet and greet by a bathroom, which is a lie. All right. This was, in fact, talk with the guy who originally, put together the budget for this. This was where Flynn Rider and Rapunzel were supposed to meet guests.
Really? That's
one of the reasons why it's as heavily themed as it is. In fact, the area where the plug-in station, or what was originally supposed to be after they got bumped out of the Crow's Nest, where the Magic Band was going to be, that's where Flynn Rider and Rapunzel were going to be. Because, as it turns out, they had to move them, that Storytime with Belle area that used to be next to the castle. Mm-hmm. You have to understand, when something goes in there, when they do a meet and greet that's tied to a new movie, that's paid for by the studio. That's not paid for by the park. Oh. And what was happening with Tangled with the Rapunzel meet and greet, it was one of the longest lines in the park. In fact, this was a character that clearly right out of the gate had connected with little girls, and they really wanted to meet Rapunzel and they wanted to meet Flynn Rider, but here comes Brave. And the studio's like, look, excuse me, we pay for that space. We have this new Pixar movie coming out that's princess themed. We spent all this money making little audio animatronic bears. You got to move. And so the notion is, all right, so move the pieces around the board. So, okay, we'll create an area in the park where Flynn Rider and Rapunzel can meet with guests. And okay, yeah, it's next to a bathroom, but that's still, we can still
create a picturesque bathroom. It's a lovely bathroom.
Create this area off to the side, and now here comes Magic Bands, which again is this $1 billion thing. And it's like, no, we need a place in the park that people can go to do. And they're middle of construction. They've designated this is where Flynn Rider and Rapunzel are going to go, and it's like, no, we need that space. And so all right, so they bump them out, and they're still looking for a place inside of the kingdom to have Flynn Rider and Rapunzel meet with guests. Meanwhile, suddenly, after kicking them out of this space and designating that this is where, we have to be properly wired so people could come in and do, change out their fast passes and, reschedule and all that, suddenly Magical Express, Magic Band starts to slow down, and you have this hole in the middle of this area. And somebody came up with, as a stopgap, well, we'll just make it a charging station. And again, if you look at the theming of it compared to everything else, it's just sort of like, so you went to Home Depot. It's like, okay, got it.
It's the charging stations themselves. They look like sort of like tree stumps.
Yes.
With metal doors that you open, and then inside are USB and plugs and places to plug in your phone and stuff. And there are a set of a few sets of picnic tables. But the interesting thing about it, to your point about it being a meet and greet, is it's sort of this peninsula that ends at a picturesque stream and backdrop of the back of Yankee Trader, where it's like, this is either the prettiest road to nowhere that Disney has ever constructed, or this is actually where you would stand to get your photo if it was a meet and greet. And essentially what they did is took out the extra space where the line would be, and then put in the charging stations and the tables. That's hysterical.
But this is the thing that I think that a lot of people, particularly a lot of the hardcore fans, don't get, is that how fluid some of these decisions are. That again, when they started, when they okayed construction, they put the money in the budget for the Rapunzel bathroom, there was always the notion of bathroom, we're spending all this money on theming because there will be a meet and greet to the left. This is all about storytelling, and this is and just inside of the period of the time that this was being constructed, you had, somebody realized that we're going to need a place in the park where they're going to have to change out fast passes, and that took precedent because this is $1 billion project versus the money they're making off of Tangled.
Well, the thing with the meet and greet, putting it right there, also makes sense because you're essentially pulling people to different areas of the park to do the meet and greet. So if you've got one over by Haunted Mansion or between It's a Small World and Haunted Mansion, you've got another one over on the opposite side of the castle. That's good crowd distribution.
Oh no, absolutely. For all those people who have been asking, why spend this much money on theming a bathroom? Why build a replica of the Rapunzel Tower? That's why.
Yeah, it wasn't just a bathroom. Yeah.
But again, and just to bring this full circle, what the irony of this whole situation is, they've had employees standing there with clipboards and gauging people's response to the charging station.
Yep.
It's one of the most popular additions to that Disney's had in the park in years, and now it's like the notion of they've got to figure out, okay, if we pull it out of here once Magical Express my Disney Experience actually goes, and we need this space for them to change the tickets, where the hell are we putting it? Because clearly the guests are responding to it.
Yeah, they'd have to put it they could put them back in Gaston's Tavern. You can always do it at City Hall, right? You can always drop off your phone at City Hall and have them charge it. But that's a hike because that's back by the entrance, and I don't think you want to put tired people near the entrance if you don't have to.
No, that's it exactly.
Yeah.
And more to the point that they found that people, actually at that moment when you say, okay, you give us your phone, your charger, and we'll take it back here and charge it. For a lot of people, that's a deal breaker.
It's like, you give me your left arm while you walk around the park. Yeah, you walk around
that's the way that people feel about their phones these days.
So where are the kiosks going? FastPass Plus.
Wow, there is the $64 question, Len. I mean, in fact, it's been one of these situations where the conversations are, well, do we take the smoking areas? Do we?
Yes.
I
think you should just put them in the smoking areas. Fight.
Because that's one of the situations is they're trying to anticipate what the actual guest demand for this will be. That is this going to be the equivalent of, this is where you put the fire extinguisher. The chances are not a lot of, you're not going to have to use it a lot. Or is the hard reality that, look, this is Florida, this is Walt Disney World, it's going to rain, or things are going to go down. We shouldn't just have one of these deep in the park. Yeah. We should have 2 or 3.
I'm thinking one a land is sort of a minimum.
Yeah, but that's the thing. At least to start, they were only City Hall and this one deep in the park, and and in fact, that was going to be the toughest part of the conversation. I mean, imagine turning to somebody who walks, who's walked all the way over to Big Thunder, and it's like, I'm sorry, the attraction is down. But if you hike over to,
if you go back to the middle of the park, exactly, yeah, you can
get that line full of disgruntled people. You can change your ticket out to some other experience in the park.
Or so it'll be people who don't have smartphones, who can't do it for whatever reason. I know though, like even this last week when we were in the parks, the Magic Kingdom was so crowded that we couldn't get a reliable Wi-Fi signal in the park. That it was literally just being inundated, the entire network. So they're going to have to go through some network changes too before they think that they can offload some of those changes to their app as well, because it's not, if it didn't work on Easter, it's not going to work on New Year's Eve without some.
But again, it's funny you bring that up, because I remember you and I talking about this, and it was like when they first went with the free Wi-Fi for the resort and how miserable it was during the day to try to get on. But when you do our job, when you're loading stuff on a website at 4:00 in the morning, it just flew.
It was great from 2 to 6 in the morning, and then after that it wasn't. But it's improved. There are still large sections of the Magic Kingdom where and especially Epcot, where you either don't get a signal or you're constantly being kicked on and off the network. And I don't know if it's because they've got repeaters in different places, or the infrastructure isn't completely tuned in yet. But there are instances where you'll be walking along and you just won't have a signal, a Wi-Fi signal, which is unusual. Now the resorts, I think, are getting much better. That they've sort of figured out what they need in terms of resort demand. Let me tell you the other thing that I found when I was there last week. So I'm walking through Winnie the Pooh, and they've got one of the cast member consoles for FastPass Plus up, and there's no one near it. So I did what any red-blooded American geek would do, and I started tapping on the touchscreen to see what it says. So and I took some photos too, of course. So this FastPass Plus thing is really interesting, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. But there's a couple of different options on the screen. One is to define what attraction you want to go on for your FastPass Plus experience. So this is, I guess, people who maybe have a FastPass Plus scheduled for Winnie the Pooh, but they get to Winnie the Pooh and realize they don't want to use it for that. And apparently you'll be able to ask a cast member to change it. So you can select any of the other FastPass Plus attractions, and it lists them all out. And then it lists where you're coming from. So you could say, I'm coming from Winnie the Pooh. But the interesting thing that I saw on this was after you scan your wristband or your RFID, it asks you which, and this is their words, which touch point you're going to be using, the left side or the right side. So my thought on this is that if you're going to do like a custom experience where you're riding It's a Small World and they say Guten Tag Jim or whatever, they have to know whether you're on the left side or the right side of the boat because they need to flash that message on the appropriate side. Is that what that is? Is that what the touch point is?
The left or right touch point?
It's called touch points, and it's left side or right side of the ride. And the only thing I could think of for this was, you have to select this, by the way. And I think this is something that's not getting any sort of discussion in in the online communities. The idea that if they're going to customize a ride, like let's say the Haunted Mansion, right, and they're going to show you an effect, they have to know which way you're looking, because it doesn't do any good at all for personalization if they're saying Happy Birthday Jim on the right side of Haunted Mansion, and you're on the left side of the ride. I mean, yeah, granted, you could look over, but chances are you're going to look predominantly in the direction in which you're seated.
Dear Lord, this is
again, that was the other thing. It's an additional level of complexity. Right?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, it's funny you bring up Mansion, which obviously has that whole Scene 1 outside interactive queue thing.
Yep.
That's been another problem related to the slowdown now of the launch, the official turnkey of Magic Bands and by Disney Express. That a lot of, without that out there making money for the company, without that being the thing that drives vacation packages and that sort of thing, there's been a concurrent slowdown of the install of these Scene 1s. It's like look, we without this actually being operational, that means that the money that, and in fact that's the interesting thing, supposedly the Magic Band, the Magic Express, that sort of stuff was supposed to be funding the installation of all these new Scene 1s, and without this happening, a lot of these have been turned off. In fact, it's
yeah, you could see them. You could see like where they're supposed to be, like in the Pirates queue and
yeah. In fact, the one that's making the people of the kingdom absolutely crazy is, think about it. You shut down when you built the giant Rapunzel bathroom. The whole notion was you did that so you could then shut off the Peter Pan bathroom and turn that into extended queue for that. That project is now on hold
because the bathrooms, I think, are I didn't look. I think the bathrooms were closed last week.
Yep, and the notion was they were going to be torn down, and the whole idea was that new interactive space for Peter Pan, which again, one of the heaviest demand dark rides in the park, was supposed to be open by this fall. And now, because again, that this is slowed down, everything's slowed down. And the other thing, frankly, is that as of right now, this whole Scene 1 concept is not traveling outside of the Magic Kingdom.
Really?
This is the one park that will have them for a while until Disney gets its house in order, so to speak, in regard to by Disney Experience and the Magic Bands thing, which from a point of view of Disney Hollywood Studios is just driving them crazy, because they've been wanting to get the lounge in place at Rock and Roller Coaster for the better part of a year now.
Oh yeah, they actually have a patent app, I think, on that actually just shows the layout of where the different sort of pens are going to be. Yeah, but there's like food and bev that's there. I mean,
well, and that's what's making them crazy, because it was like the games that you were going to be playing in that space were going to be provided by Disney Interactive, and they thought, what a killer way to introduce, to do play testing and to introduce new games that we're doing and get people excited and have them evangelize. Likewise, food and beverage was like, they're trapped. I mean, they're sitting in this queue. They're waiting the half hour to get on the ride.
Yep.
They're going to want a soda. They're going to want a snack. It's found money. And it's just sort of like, let's just turn the key on this and go. And it's just sort of like, no, I'm sorry. We're in a holding pattern, and until do we decide that we're going to actually build scene ones again, you can't build this. So
well, I've heard with Rock and Roller Coaster there's also a retheming going on. I've heard that Steven Tyler's last stint in rehab has no, honestly I've heard that they've caused him to sort of like rethink the Aerosmith portion of the ride, that Aerosmith isn't as relevant as it was perhaps in the late 90s, and with Steven not being able to stay sober long enough, it could essentially, there's a lot more downside than there is upside to having Aerosmith on that ride. So I've heard there's a possible retheming going on there.
The interesting thing is that every so often this happens. In fact, at the height of the Jonas Brothers fame, somebody at Disney was sort of looking at the amount of money that they had to, and it was one of those periods where the Aerosmith contract was coming up for an extension, and it's just sort of like, why are we giving this money to somebody else when we have these groups in the house that we could be, and again, it's the Jonas Brothers. We give them $1.45, they show up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I know, and in fact, I think it's always been one of my favorite stories about when they were originally proposing Rock and Roller Coaster. It's like, that the group that they wanted initially, was the group. They wanted the Rolling Stones, and and then Disney's rep reached out and found out how much Mick wanted, and it says, oh, okay. And they literally sent everybody working on the project out.
We would have ended up with Manfred Mann's Nitty Gritty Roller Coaster.
Well, there you go. Actually, to be honest, it was so easy. They should have just gone with the Bay City Rock and Roller Coaster. All right.
Oh, yeah, Saturday night.
Just everyone. Here's your complimentary big hair wig. But
yeah, Peter Frampton in line. Ah!
Yeah. But the guys working on the project were literally sent out to their cars to bring in their CDs, and just everybody sat there and tried to figure out what other group had a strong enough catalog and was affordable, and that was Aerosmith at the time.
Yeah, because this was sort of like right before they got their sort of their comeback with this stuff. I've heard the one possible retheming for Rock and Roller Coaster is Phineas and Ferb.
Oh boy. It's so interesting you bring that up, because right now Phineas and Ferb is sort of become Disney's SpongeBob SquarePants. It's the gift that keeps on giving, which is why, whenever you are talking about things being done at the park, Phineas and Ferb comes up. I mean, I know we've talked in previous shows about the possible Phineas and Ferb retheme of Imagination.
Yeah, Doofenshmirtz.
Yep. And in fact, what's kind of interesting is that Jerry Reese, the gentleman who shot Cinemagic for Disneyland Paris, who's done a lot of the ride films for Disney over the years, alluded to the fact that he's working on a new film for Epcot that's going to debut in 2015. And the smart money is that he's working on the EO replacement. And
oh, really?
It stands to reason that if they're looking to do a Phineas and Ferb retheme, but the interesting thing, the counterbalance this, I was just talking with somebody at the studio, and they were talking about, I asked about that there's been rumors for the last, well, not rumors, that it's a script. There's a Phineas and Ferb theatrical film planned. That the gimmick of it was that it's Phineas and Ferb crossover into our world, and I think that at one point they were going to have Dr. Doofenshmirtz be translated into an actual human being, and there were conversations at that point about having Jim Carrey play Dr. Doofenshmirtz. But right now, that there's actually kind of a belief in house that maybe Phineas and Ferb have crested, that that we may have reached that moment where that this is as far as this franchise will go. So everything's kind of on hold till they see how the Mission Marvel episode that's going to run this summer does. That if that does huge ratings and gets lots of attention, the theatrical film may get turned back on, and likewise, all of these various retheming things go on. But then again, it just becomes the question of what's the park that these guys fit in.
Yeah, that's the thing with well, I could definitely see anything going into the studios, right? That it totally makes sense in the studios. Yep. The Imagination retheming in Epcot was a little more tenuous, because it's not that Epcot doesn't have characters, but I could sort of see Nemo going in the seas, in a sort of like hold my nose and do it type thing. But putting Phineas and Ferb or putting Doofenshmirtz in there, as much as I love the character, that would sort of essentially be the last barrier to just putting any character in any sort of thing. I have a great imagination story though. So Hannah, my daughter, is 14, and her friend, her 15-year-old friend, were in Future World last week, and so this was during the Easter spring break period, and even then, when Soarin' had 150, 170-minute waits, they walk into Imagination. They're literally the only ones in the pavilion. Instead of the cast member asking them how many people were in her party, they asked if they were lost. Because two 14-year-old girls or 14 and 15-year-old girls don't apparently walk into Imagination with the intent to ride. She said they were the only people in the pavilion, and the cast member asked if they were lost.
Wow. Oh, that's but the weird thing of it is that when it comes to the retheming, one of the roadblocks that always gets thrown up comes from the retail side of the park, and they're like, look, you can do whatever you want to this attraction, but Figment has to be a presence, because of the that the
it's
$500,000 worth of plush they sell every year. Figment.
they're not gonna get rid of that. I could see sort of integrating Figment in somehow, either even if it's a nod or a scene or an homage or something, or a pre-show with Figment where they sort of meet. I think it's totally doable. I'd be okay with a Doofenshmirtz thing, I guess. I'd like to see them do something completely different, but but that's the thing. Where do you put them, right? So they definitely go in the studios. I don't think anyone's saying that Phineas and Ferb go in the Magic Kingdom. And there's no real Animal Kingdom thing there. They don't really do that many animal episodes.
No. But it's interesting you bring up this issue, because for a time there was a legitimate policy, at least when it came to Walt Disney World, about where and when characters appeared. The belief was initially that when a new film came out, it made perfect sense that you had that character at the studios. Because again, brand new movie, so you go to the studios, and here we are promoting our brand new movie. But then, the point was that after it had gone through its entire life cycle, where theatrical release, DVD release, you're 2 years in. At that point, if this character is appropriate, it then went to go live at the Magic Kingdom. The notion was that, when it became time for the happily ever after portion of a character's story, they then went to the kingdom. And then, and it was only a select group of characters that had sufficient legs to continue in the park, whether it's, but at the same time, it's interesting to note the characters that frankly can go anywhere. That's in fact the only place I haven't seen Belle and Beauty and the Beast is Animal Kingdom, which again probably because they'd want to shove the Beast in a cage. But yeah, think about it. They're in Epcot in Paris. They have their restaurant, the studios. They have their show at the the studios. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But again, that's because there is in fact demand by guests, that they want to meet with this character. They want to have their photo taken. So,
it's true on the Disney Cruise Line too. I mean, you literally cannot go a day without hearing "Be Our Guest" on the cruise line. Hey, going back real quick to Epcot, you said that you mentioned at the beginning of the show something about Future Fest.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, this is Disney, and we're always looking for different ways to bring people to property. And let's be honest, when you look at Epcot, where have all of these events been staged? That they're
Wonders of Life.
But at the same time, the Food and Wine or Flower and Garden, they start at the edge of Future World. And,
right.
And then, they drive out to World Showcase Lagoon because, let's be honest here, that's where you want people at the end of the evening, buying food and standing around the lagoon waiting for illuminations. But in-house, let's face it, Interventions isn't all that innovative. Future World isn't all that futuristic anymore. And
we talked about this in a couple episodes ago, yeah.
Yeah, there's just a belief that, look, we need to get the Future World side associated with futuristic elements again. We need to make this more exciting, more about tomorrow. And then just to be cold-blooded about this, it's like they were looking at their schedule, and it's like, okay, we've got Flower and Garden in, the late winter into early spring. We then have the, Food and Wine, starting in late summer, going into the fall. We have our winter holiday thing. It's like we need, and they were just looking cold-bloodedly at that chunk of time that follows now the second marathon event, the Tinkerbell Half Marathon, and before the start of Flower and Garden. And it just...
so like late February to early March?
Yeah, I mean,
we get these 3 weeks here where we haven't yet crammed a promotion in.
Well, the interesting thing is they've now figured it's not 21 days. I guess that was the original thought. They went out and talked to, because obviously you need people who are willing to commit to this thing.
Yeah.
So they went out and they went to E3. They went to the Consumer Electronics Show in January, and they're looking to do E3 in June in Los Angeles. But they're talking to all these companies about, would you come and take part in this? And again, you have to understand that for Disney's approached a lot of these companies in the past, but it's always been the deal breaker of, we need the 10-year commitment. You have to pay for a giant booth. You have to pay for your own cast members or your own people to staff it. For a lot of people, just that was too big of a commitment. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, for 5 weeks to have a temporary booth that's outside that we can showcase our product, and the tens of thousands of people who come through Epcot every day, it's like, okay, that on paper makes sense. And from Disney's point of view, they believe that they're going to be able to take 2 or 3 of these companies, and again, remember, this is something they're hoping to make annual, this Future Fest. Right. They're figuring if we can convert 2 or 3 of these people who take part every year into possibly transitioning in and coming into interventions and putting into exhibits, it's win-win.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is all about filling up that spot in the calendar, but in a clever sort of way, because it's Future Fest, this will all be located in the Future World section, which means that all of the planting, everything that's done, to set up Flower and Garden won't be disturbed, that it'll all be concentrated to the front of the park, and they can then charge forward with all that without having to worry about, that this impacting an event that's already hugely popular, though at the same time, I love how Flower and Garden is sort of mutating into Food and Wine.
Flower Garden, Food and Wine, yeah.
There we go.
Exactly.
That's right. Let me get a hoe and let me get a bottle of wine, and I'm going out to garden.
Well, doesn't everyone? I mean, come on.
There we go.
Yeah, that's surprising, but it totally makes sense if they can segue from one event to the other and do sort of a front to back approach to the park. I mean, in terms of park ops, which they have to be cognizant of, it definitely makes sense.
At any time, and in fact, it's for example, they had to, when they were talking about doing this, they had to turn around and go to the Run Disney people, and it's like, all right, how much tear down time will you need?
Yeah, that's right. To get rid of the stands and the and the bath open up the parking lot, get rid of the bathrooms, the porta potties, and yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. Yeah.
No, it's all project management from that point of view. You have to have Run Disney out of the way before you could then start loading in your temporary tent structures and that sort of thing for this Future Fest, and they've done a lot of the survey work and that sort of thing, obviously after hours, to get a sense of how much space, and and then it's it's funny, the various stories about, well, if we're going to be doing, we're going to have outside tent structures with a lot of really sensitive electronics, and it's like, does it make sense to have the fountain on?
Exactly, because you want to add the humidity to the Florida weather, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's just like, all right, so we're going to have to discontinue that, and it's like, and we can use that as stage space. We'll throw down a temporary stage up there, and so it goes on and on and on. But yeah, that's
we'll have Robbie Knievel jump over it. Why not? Sure.
But no, it's one of these situations where this is all about Disney trying to figure out how to make the turnstile spin, and Disney really. Let me be blunt here. Disney really wants to announce this as quickly as possible because they want, for example, to send out, the flyers and brochures to the various junior highs and high schools in the Florida and, the surrounding states area with the notion of, hey, we're going to be doing this Future Fest thing, and if you want to bring, your students down to experience this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, by the way, did you see the thing that Apple had sent out to educators? This is exactly the same thing. A couple weeks ago, they started suggesting trips to the Apple Store as science-based field trips because you can go play with new technology. I'm like, oh god,
but again, that's
I get it.
And let's not overlook the fact that Bob Iger is on the board at Apple, so you can anticipate. In fact, I guess
they're probably that's how that idea had cross-pollinated apparently.
Well, there's at least a friend who's familiar with this project was telling me about. He's seen at least one logo for it that, and again, remember that there's art out there about Splash Mountain sponsored, or Zippity Doodah Run sponsored by McDonald's. I mean, a full painting of this, but the logo for the Future Fest said sponsored by Apple.
Really?
So, But again, that's just you do a prototype.
Yeah, you got a prototype. Yeah.
But yeah, if that were in fact to happen, that the cross promotion there alone would be huge.
And Apple certainly got the money to do it. I mean, they're sitting on a buttload of cash.
Yeah, but they're just but that's part of the thing. You've got to convince everybody involved here that it's worth it. And it's always tough the first year to convince people. It's like, look, come in. You'll be in a tent outside in Orlando. What could happen?
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Forget that we just did the Oz and Great and Powerful tornado event last year. Odds of that happening are so slim. I mean,
go figure. But yeah,
interesting. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Unofficial Guide at Disney Dish podcast. Jim, thanks as always for attending. For Jim Hill, this is Len Testa. Please go onto iTunes and rate our podcast and give us feedback on what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.